The heavy oak doors of Thompson & Associates law firm felt impossibly heavy as I pushed them open that Tuesday morning. My hands trembled slightly, from stress, from lack of sleep, from the dawning realization that my 15-year marriage was unraveling in ways I had never imagined possible. "Mr. Callahan?" The receptionist's voice was professionally warm. "Mr. Thompson will see you now." I followed her through the tasteful hallway, lined with degrees and awards that were meant to reassure clients like me that their lives weren't completely falling apart, that there were systems and procedures for even this, the discovery that your wife had attempted to drain your joint accounts of $347,652 while telling you that you were nothing without her. Martin Thompson rose from behind his imposing desk when I entered, extending his hand with the confidence of someone who had seen it all before. In his mid-60s, with silver hair and the polished demeanor of someone who had navigated hundreds of divorces, he exuded exactly what I needed at that moment: calm competence. "Daniel, please sit down." He gestured to a comfortable leather chair across from him. "I've reviewed the documents you emailed over. I understand this is an extremely difficult situation. An understatement if there ever was one. 3 days ago, my world had made sense. Elaine and I had been married for 15 years. We had built a successful interior design business together, her creative vision paired with my financial and operational expertise. We had a beautiful home in the suburbs, a summer cottage by the lake, and a circle of friends who considered us the stable couple they all admired. Then came the notification from our bank about unusual activity on our joint business account. The discovery that Elaine had attempted to transfer nearly everything we had to a private account I knew nothing about. The confrontation in our home office where she had looked me directly in the eyes and said those words that still echoed in my head: "You're nothing without me, Daniel. Everyone knows I'm the real talent. You're just the numbers guy." But the bank had frozen the transfers pending verification due to the unusual amount and destination. A small miracle of modern banking algorithms that had given me this narrow window to act. "So," Martin said, opening a leather portfolio, "let's discuss what happened and your options going forward. The clock is ticking, and we need to make sure your interests are protected." I took a deep breath and began to tell him exactly how my wife of 15 years had decided to rewrite our story, and how a frozen bank card had unexpectedly given me a chance to write a different ending. "Start from the beginning," Martin suggested, pen poised over his legal pad. "When did you first notice something was wrong?" I shifted in the leather chair, trying to organize the chaotic events of the past 3 days into a coherent narrative. "Looking back, there were signs I missed," I admitted. "About 6 months ago, Elaine started insisting on more control over the business finances, something she'd never shown much interest in before. She said she wanted to understand that side better, and I thought it was great. We'd always had clearly defined roles. She handled the creative and client-facing aspects. I managed operations, finances, and logistics." Martin nodded, making notes. "And the business itself? How is it structured legally?" "We're equal partners on paper. Callahan Designs LLC, established 12 years ago. Before that, Elaine worked independently as a designer, and I was in corporate finance. When her business started growing, I left my job to help her scale it properly. We've built it into something substantial. 7 employees, a downtown studio, clients across 3 states. And the financial accounts? We have separate personal accounts, but we share a joint household account where we both contribute proportionally to our incomes. The business has its main operating account, a payroll account, and a tax reserve account." I paused, the familiar comfort of financial details momentarily steadying me. "All business accounts require both our signatures for withdrawals over $5,000, a safeguard we put in place years ago." "Yet she attempted to transfer nearly $350,000. Martin's eyebrow raised slightly. "She found a loophole," I explained, the humiliation fresh again. "The electronic banking system we use allows either partner to initiate transfers. The dual authorization is only triggered at final approval or for checks. She initiated the transfers on Friday evening, knowing the bank would flag them as suspicious, but probably not process the verification until Monday morning. She was counting on me not checking our accounts over the weekend." Martin's pen moved steadily across his pad. "And what alerted you to the transfers?" "Pure luck. Our bank has an automatic notification system for unusual activity. I got a text alert around 8 p.m. Friday asking me to verify several large transfers. When I logged in, I swallowed hard, remembering the shock. When I logged in, I saw pending transfers of nearly all our business operating capital and project deposits to an account I didn't recognize. What did you do next? I called the bank's fraud department immediately. They placed a temporary freeze on all outgoing transfers pending verification. Then I called Elaine, who wasn't home. She told me she was meeting a client for dinner. The memory of that phone call tightened my chest. She didn't answer. I texted, saying we needed to talk about the account alerts. No response. I took a sip of water from the glass Martin had provided, trying to maintain my composure. She came home around 11, clearly surprised to see me still awake. When I asked about the transfers, she was different, cold. She said the business was really her business, that she was restructuring our financial arrangement to better reflect her contributions. Martin's expression remained neutral, but his eyes showed he'd heard similar stories before. Her exact words, as best you can recall. I closed my eyes briefly, the scene playing out in vivid detail. She said, "I've carried you for years, Daniel. Everyone knows Callahan Designs is successful because of me. You're just the numbers guy, replaceable. I've been offered an amazing opportunity in Los Angeles, and I'm taking it. With my clients and portfolio, I'll do even better without your conservative limitations holding me back." The memory of her dismissive tone still had the power to wind me. 15 years of partnership, romantic and professional, reduced to the numbers guy. And the "you're nothing without me" comment, Martin prompted. That came when I reminded her that we built the business together, that my financial systems and client management were as integral to our success as her designs. She laughed and said, "You're nothing without me, Daniel. You know it, I know it, and all our clients know it. Who do you think they'll follow when I leave?" Martin nodded, making more notes. "And what happened next?" "I slept in the guest room. In the morning she acted like nothing had happened, said I was overreacting about the transfers, that she was just reorganizing our finances for a project. But something had changed. I could see it in her eyes." I leaned forward. I checked her email while she was in the shower. "Her email?" Martin looked up. "Was this a shared account or her private email?" "Her business email, which I have legitimate access to as co-owner of the company," I clarified. "That's where I found correspondence with a design firm in Los Angeles dating back 4 months. They've been courting her to join them, and she's been secretly meeting with our biggest clients, promising to take their projects with her when she relocates." Martin's expression darkened. "That's potentially a breach of fiduciary duty to your business partnership, as well as attempted misappropriation of company assets. Do you have copies of these emails?" I nodded, patting my briefcase. "Everything. Emails, transfer notifications, our partnership agreement, business formation documents." When I confronted her with the emails, she didn't even deny it.
"He just said the bank freeze was a temporary setback, and that I should be smart, and agree to a quick division of assets that wouldn't leave me completely destitute. And where is she now? At home, I assume. I spent last night at a hotel after she made it clear she has no intention of leaving our house. She's scheduled to meet with clients today, clients who have significant deposits with us for projects in progress." I met Martin's gaze directly.
"I need to know what I can do to protect myself, our business, and our clients before she destroys everything we've built." Martin closed his portfolio and leaned forward, his expression serious but reassuring. "Daniel, the bank freeze has given you a critical window of opportunity. Let's not waste it." Martin's office transformed into a command center over the next hour as he outlined a strategic response to Elaine's attempted financial coup. His calm efficiency was exactly what I needed, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos of the past 72 hours. "Time is our most critical factor," he explained, consulting his notes. "The bank's fraud prevention freeze is temporary, typically 3 to 5 business days while they investigate. We need to take decisive action before that window closes." "What's our first move?" I asked, feeling a surge of clarity for the first time since seeing those pending transfers. "Immediate legal protection for the business assets and operations," Martin replied. "I'm drafting an emergency injunction to prevent Elaine from accessing business accounts, contacting clients on behalf of the business, or removing any business property or intellectual assets. He turned to his computer, fingers moving efficiently over the keyboard. We'll file this with the court this afternoon. Judge Harlow is presiding today. She's fair and understands the time-sensitive nature of business disputes. As Martin worked, he continued outlining our strategy. Simultaneously, we need to secure the physical and digital assets of the business. Do you have administrative access to all company systems? Email, design files, client database, accounting software? I nodded. Yes, I set up all our systems and maintain them. Elaine has user access but not admin privileges. Good. We'll need to temporarily restrict her access, not eliminate it, as that could appear punitive to the court, but modify it to prevent any deletion or removal of company files. He looked up from his computer. Can you do that remotely? Yes, from my laptop. Do it now, he instructed. Document exactly what changes you make and when. Everything must be defensible as necessary business protection, not retaliation. As I implemented the access restrictions, Martin continued drafting the emergency injunction. The systematic approach helped focus my thoughts, pulling me back from the emotional abyss of betrayal toward the practical challenges that needed immediate attention. What about our clients? I asked, completing the system adjustments. Elaine has meetings scheduled today with the Richardsons and the Westbrook Hotel project team. Both have substantial deposits with us for designs in progress. Martin considered this carefully. That's tricky territory. We can't legally prevent her from meeting clients in her capacity as a designer. However, we can notify clients that the business is undergoing a partnership restructuring and request that any financial discussions or decisions be temporarily routed through you until the situation is resolved. Won't that alarm them? Less than discovering their designer has disappeared to Los Angeles with their deposits, Martin pointed out pragmatically. Transparency, controlled transparency, is your best approach here. These clients have relationships with both of you, correct? I nodded. Yes, especially the long-term ones. They value Elaine's design vision, but also appreciate our business reliability and project management, which has always been my domain. Then a simple, professional email from you as the financial partner, explaining that some internal business matters are being resolved and requesting their patience and continued communication with both partners, is appropriate. No accusations, no details about the attempted fund transfers. Martin handed me a carefully worded template he'd prepared. The language was perfect, professional, reassuring, and lacking any hint of the personal devastation beneath the partnership restructuring euphemism. Next, Martin continued, we need to address your personal financial vulnerability. You mentioned separate personal accounts, but a joint household account. Yes, my salary goes to my personal account, and I transfer my portion of household expenses to the joint account monthly. Elaine does the same. I paused, realizing something. But our household emergency fund, about $42,000, is in that joint account, and she has equal access. Then we need to act there as well, Martin said, making additional notes. I'll include the household joint account in the emergency injunction, but as a precaution, you should transfer your documented contribution to that emergency fund to your personal account immediately. Is that legal? I asked, hesitant about taking any action that could appear retaliatory. Protecting your personal contribution to a joint fund when there's clear evidence of attempted financial impropriety? Yes, but only your documented contribution, no more. Martin's voice was firm. This isn't about punishment, Daniel. It's about protection. As we continued working through the immediate protective measures, a notification appeared on my phone, an email from Elaine to our entire client list. I opened it with growing alarm, then wordlessly handed my phone to Martin. The message was brief but devastating. Dear valued clients, I'm excited to announce that I'll be joining Maxwell Design Group in Los Angeles next month. I'm committed to ensuring a smooth transition for all current projects and would love to discuss continuing our relationship through my new position. Your vision remains my priority regardless of location. Martin read it quickly, his expression darkening. She's accelerating her timeline. This changes things. He reached for his phone. We need that emergency hearing today, not tomorrow. And we need to adjust our strategy. For the first time since seeing those frozen transfers, I felt something beyond shock and betrayal. A steely resolve. Elaine had declared war on everything we'd built together. both personally and professionally. Thanks to a vigilant banking algorithm and a frozen card, I had the chance to fight back. Whatever it takes, I told Martin. I won't let her destroy what we built. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of legal maneuvers and strategic decisions. Judge Harlow granted our emergency injunction by late afternoon, legally preventing Elaine from accessing business accounts or transferring any company assets pending a formal hearing. The bank extended their freeze based on the court order, effectively closing the immediate financial vulnerability. Martin's paralegal served Elaine with the injunction at our home while I remained at the law office, preparing for the next phases of what was rapidly becoming not just a divorce, but a complex business dissolution. "She's been served," Martin announced, hanging up his phone. According to Tessa, Elaine was, her words, icily furious but not surprised. "Did she say anything else?" I asked, bracing myself. "Only that her attorney would be in contact." Martin raised an eyebrow. That was quick. She must have already retained counsel. The realization that Elaine had likely been planning this move for months, consulting attorneys while sleeping beside me, designing exit strategies while we shared meals, hit me with fresh intensity. How long had I been living with a stranger wearing my wife's face? "What happens now?" I asked, forcing myself to focus on the practical path forward. "Now we secure the business operations," Martin replied. "Have you contacted your employees?" I nodded. "I sent the email we drafted. Just facts. That Elaine and I are working through some business restructuring issues, that all jobs are secure, and that project work should continue as scheduled with both of us remaining involved for now." "Good. And clients?" "I've personally called our 5 largest clients, including the Richardsons and Westbrook. Elaine had already reached out to them about her exciting new opportunity, but I was able to reassure them that their projects and deposits are secure with Callahan Designs." I managed a small smile. The Richardsons actually seemed relieved. They value Elaine's design sense but have always preferred dealing with me on project management and finances. "That's very helpful information," Martin noted. "Client loyalty will be a significant factor in business valuation during settlement negotiations." The rest of the day was consumed with practical matters, changing door codes at the studio, documenting the status of all client projects and deposits, and preparing a complete financial snapshot of both the business and our personal assets. Martin insisted on thoroughness, emphasizing that detailed documentation now would strengthen our position later. By evening, exhaustion had overtaken the adrenaline that had carried me through the day. Martin noticed my flagging energy and suggested we continue in the morning. "You need rest, Daniel. The immediate fires are contained. Where are you staying tonight?" "The Residence Inn again, I suppose. I can't face going home yet." Martin considered this. "Have you given any thought to reclaiming your house?" "Legally, you have every right to be there." The thought of returning to the home Elaine and I had shared, now poisoned by betrayal, made my stomach clench. "Not yet. It feels contaminated somehow." "Understandable, but don't make decisions about major assets based on temporary emotions." Martin's tone was gentle but direct. "That house represents significant equity. Don't abandon it just to avoid conflict." I nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his advice even as I dreaded the prospect of sharing space with Elaine during what would inevitably be a contentious divorce. "I'll think about it, but not tonight." "Fair enough." Martin gathered his notes. "One more thing before you go. Have you checked your personal credit report and accounts? Given Elaine's willingness to access joint funds, it would be prudent to verify she hasn't opened any credit lines in your name or against jointly held assets." The suggestion sparked a new worry I hadn't even considered. "I'll do that immediately. And change all your passwords. Email, banking, social media, everything. Use complex passwords Elaine wouldn't easily guess. People who know us intimately often know our security patterns." As I drove to the hotel that evening, Martin's advice echoed in my mind alongside Elaine's cutting words. "You're nothing without me." The woman who had shared my bed for 15 years, who had built a business and a life with me, truly believed I was merely an accessory to her success, disposable once she had a better offer. My phone buzzed with a text as I parked at the hotel. "Elaine, your lawyer's tactics are childish and unnecessary. I've retained Patricia Winters. She'll contact Thompson tomorrow. This could have been civilized, Daniel. You're making a mistake." Patricia Winters, one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the city, known for her scorched earth approach to marital dissolution. The implied threat was clear. Elaine was preparing for war. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I called Martin and left a voicemail. Elaine has hired Patricia Winters. We should be prepared for an aggressive response to the injunction. As I settled into another night in an anonymous hotel room, I realized something surprising. Beneath the hurt and betrayal, a different emotion was emerging. Not just anger or righteous indignation, but a quiet determination. Elaine thought I was nothing without her. The frozen bank card had given me the chance to prove otherwise. The following morning brought the first counteroffensive from Elaine's camp. Patricia Winters filed an emergency motion claiming our injunction was overly broad and punitive, preventing Elaine from legitimately pursuing her professional career. The motion demanded immediate access to business accounts and client files, along with the removal of all digital restrictions I had implemented. Exactly what I expected, Martin said as we reviewed the filing in his office. They're testing our resolve and the strength of our position. How do we respond? I asked. Methodically and with evidence. Martin tapped the thick folder of documentation we had compiled. Winters is counting on emotional arguments about Elaine's right to professional advancement. We'll counter with concrete evidence of attempted financial misappropriation and breach of fiduciary duty. Judge Harlow scheduled a hearing for the following afternoon, giving us 24 hours to prepare our response. Martin's team worked efficiently, building a compelling narrative supported by bank records, email evidence, and our partnership agreement. While the legal battle was engaging my strategic mind, providing welcome distraction from emotional turmoil, I still had a business to run. I spent the afternoon at our design studio, meeting with employees who were understandably concerned about the tension between the company's founders. Lisa, our senior project manager who had been with us for 7 years, pulled me aside after the staff meeting. Daniel, we're all worried. The team needs stability. What can I tell them that's actually true without violating your privacy? Her directness was refreshing after days of careful legal language and veiled threats. I considered her question carefully. You can tell them that Elaine and I are working through significant business disagreements about the future direction of Callahan Designs. You can tell them that their jobs are secure and project work will continue. And you can tell them that regardless of how this resolves, their talents are valued and will be respected. Lisa studied me for a moment. Is Elaine really leaving for Los Angeles? She's pursuing an opportunity there, yes. And the company? If she leaves, my Callahan Designs will continue, I stated with more confidence than I actually felt. The form and structure might change, but we have too many clients, too many projects, and too many talented people to simply dissolve. Lisa nodded, apparently satisfied with my answer. For what it's worth, Daniel. Most of us work here because of the culture and systems you've built. Elaine is brilliant creatively, but you're the one who made this a functional business where people actually want to work. Her words caught me off guard, a direct contradiction to Elaine's dismissive, "You're just the numbers guy" assessment. Thank you, Lisa. That means a lot right now. After addressing immediate business concerns, I finally gathered the courage to return to our home while Elaine was scheduled to be at a client meeting. I needed clothes, personal documents, and if I was honest with myself, some connection to the life I had built before everything imploded. The house was quiet when I entered, sunlight streaming through the windows Elaine had insisted on enlarging during our renovation 3 years ago. Everything looked exactly as it had 4 days earlier, before the bank notification that had altered the course of my life. The familiar space felt both comforting and alienating, filled with memories now tainted by the knowledge of Elaine's deception. In our bedroom, I efficiently packed several suitcases with clothing and personal items. On Elaine's nightstand, I noticed a leather-bound planner she had always kept, old school in her preference for handwritten notes despite our digital business systems. A yellow sticky note marked a page, and I found myself opening to it before fully considering the invasion of privacy. The page contained a handwritten timeline. April 15th, finalize offer with Maxwell Design Group. May 1st, begin client transition conversations. May 20th, transfer business funds to personal account. June 1st, file divorce papers. June 15th, announce LA relocation. July 1, begin at Maxwell Design Group. Today was May 23rd. I was looking at a meticulously planned exit strategy that would have blindsided me completely, if not for the bank's fraud detection algorithm. The cold calculation of it, planning our divorce alongside business strategies like it was just another project milestone, made my stomach turn. I photographed the page with my phone, then replaced the planner exactly as I had found it. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was premeditated financial and professional sabotage. And now I had additional evidence of Elaine's intentions. As I finished packing, I heard the front door open. Elaine was home early. The confrontation I had hoped to avoid was now inevitable. "Taking more than your fair share already?" Her voice came from the bedroom doorway, cool and controlled. I turned to face my wife of 15 years, the business partner I had trusted implicitly, the woman who had been secretly plotting my professional and financial demise while sleeping beside me each night. "Actually," I replied with a calmness that surprised me, "I'm just taking what's mine. You should understand that concept perfectly." Elaine leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying me with the appraising gaze she typically reserved for evaluating design concepts. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her linen dress unwrinkled despite the May humidity, the polished image of success she had always cultivated meticulously. "The injunction was unnecessary, Daniel," she said, her tone conversational, as if discussing a minor disagreement rather than attempted financial devastation. "We could have negotiated a reasonable separation of assets without lawyers and judges involved." "A reasonable separation," I repeated, zipping my suitcase with deliberate care. "Like transferring all our business funds to your private account without discussion? That kind of reasonable?" "A negotiating position," she dismissed with a wave of her hand. "You would have done the same if our situations were reversed." The casual confidence with which she justified her actions was stunning. In Elaine's reality, her betrayal was simply a strategic business move, a moral rather than immoral. "No, I wouldn't have," I stated firmly, "because I actually believed in our partnership, in us." Something flickered briefly in her eyes, regret, doubt, before her expression hardened again. "Partnerships evolve or dissolve, Daniel. Maxwell Design Group is offering me creative freedom you've always restricted with your endless concerns about budgets and timelines. It's a natural progression of my career. Creative freedom doesn't require emptying our accounts or stealing our clients," I pointed out. "That's not evolution, it's theft." Elaine sighed dramatically. "This is why working with you has become impossible. You see everything in such rigid black and white terms. The business assets are as much mine as yours. I was simply taking initiative in dividing them. Without discussion, without negotiation, without even the courtesy of telling me you wanted a divorce before trying to clean out our accounts." I met her gaze directly. "Do you actually believe that was ethical behavior, Elaine?" "I believe it was efficient," she countered. "And now you've forced us into an unnecessarily adversarial process that will cost us both in legal fees and damaged professional reputations." The conversation was surreal. Elaine casting herself as the reasonable party while defending actions that would have left me financially devastated if not for the bank's intervention. I recognized the manipulation technique she was employing. She had always been skilled at recasting narratives to position herself advantageously. "The hearing is tomorrow," I said, choosing not to engage further with her distorted perspective. "Martin Thompson will continue representing my interests and the interests of Callahan Designs. Patricia Winters is quite confident about our position," Elaine replied, a subtle threat underlying her casual tone. "She believes the court will recognize that your injunction is primarily vindictive, designed to damage my professional opportunities rather than protect legitimate business interests." I lifted my suitcases from the bed. "I guess we'll see what Judge Harlow thinks about attempted transfers of over $340,000 without partner consultation or approval." As I moved toward the door, Elaine stepped aside but spoke again, her voice dropping to a more intimate register. "Daniel, this doesn't have to be destructive. We had 15 good years. Let's not end it with mutual assured destruction." The shift in tactics was so transparent it was almost amusing, from justification to threat to appeal for amicable resolution, all within a 5-minute conversation. The woman I had loved and trusted was revealing herself as a master manipulator, willing to employ whatever emotional leverage might achieve her desired outcome. "I'm not interested in destruction, Elaine. Just protection and fairness." I paused at the threshold. You told me I was nothing without you. I guess we're both about to find out if that's true. Something dark flashed across her features. Anger, perhaps, that I was neither crumbling nor capitulating to her preferred narrative. Patricia warned me you might be difficult. I told her you were always the reasonable one. I see I was mistaken. People change, I replied simply. Or perhaps we just finally see them clearly. As I carried my suitcases downstairs, Elaine called after me. The Westbrook Hotel contract. They're expecting updated concept boards by Friday. I have them at the studio. If your injunction prevents me from accessing those files, you'll be the one explaining the delay to our biggest client. The implied threat was clear. Fight me, and I'll ensure our business suffers. I turned to face her from the bottom of the stairs. The Westbrook concepts are on the main server, which you still have read access to. You can present them as scheduled. I'll attend as the project manager, as always. I maintained eye contact, my voice steady. I'm not trying to sabotage our clients or projects, Elaine. I'm just ensuring you don't walk away with everything we've built together. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. The realization, perhaps, that her carefully constructed exit strategy was not proceeding according to her timeline, that the numbers guy she had dismissed so confidently was proving more formidable than anticipated. This isn't how I wanted things to end, she said, a note of genuine regret finally entering her voice. No, I agreed, reaching for the front door. You wanted them to end with me discovering you were gone along with all our money and clients. Fortunately for me, the bank had other ideas. As I loaded my suitcases into my car, I felt strangely lighter despite the confrontation. Seeing Elaine's manipulations so clearly, without the filters of love and trust that had colored our interactions for 15 years, was oddly liberating. The woman who had declared me nothing without her had unwittingly given me something valuable: clarity. Tomorrow's hearing would be the first official battle in what promised to be a difficult divorce and business dissolution. But for the first time since receiving that bank notification, I felt confident in my ability to weather whatever came next. The courtroom was already buzzing with low conversations when Martin and I arrived the following afternoon. Patricia Winters sat at the respondent's table, her signature red suit making her impossible to miss. Beside her, Elaine looked composed and professional in a conservative navy dress that subtly emphasized her creative credibility while avoiding any appearance of frivolity, a calculated wardrobe choice I recognized from our years presenting to corporate clients. Remember, Martin murmured as we took our seats, Judge Harlow is primarily concerned with preserving business assets and operations during dispute resolution. Stay focused on documented facts, not emotional aspects of Elaine's betrayal. I nodded, grateful for his guidance. Despite my legal crash course over the past few days, the courtroom environment was intimidating. Formal procedures and legal terminology creating an artificial battlefield for what was, at its core, a profoundly personal conflict. All rise. The Honorable Judge Catherine Harlow presiding. Judge Harlow, a woman in her early 60s with short gray hair and penetrating eyes, entered and took her seat with efficient movements. After the preliminary formalities, she addressed the matter directly. I've reviewed the emergency injunction granted on Tuesday, as well as the motion to dissolve filed by Mrs. Callahan's counsel. Today I'll hear arguments regarding whether the temporary restrictions on business assets and operations should remain in place pending full divorce and business dissolution proceedings. She looked between the two tables. Mr. Thompson, as the moving party on the original injunction, you may begin. Martin rose with the confident ease of someone who had presented before this judge many times. Thank you, Your Honor. The facts in this case are straightforward. Last Friday evening, Mrs. Callahan initiated unauthorized transfers totaling $347,650 from Callahan Design's primary business accounts to a personal account held solely in her name. These transfers represented approximately 87% of the company's liquid operating capital. He methodically presented our evidence: bank records showing the attempted transfers, our partnership agreement specifying dual authorization requirements for major financial decisions, and emails documenting Elaine's negotiations with Maxwell Design Group in Los Angeles. Furthermore, Your Honor, Martin continued, displaying the timeline I had discovered in Elaine's planner, we have evidence that Mrs. Callahan's actions were not impulsive but part of a calculated strategy to remove business assets, clients, and intellectual property from Callahan Designs before announcing her intention to join a competing firm in another state. Judge Harlow studied the timeline with a furrowed brow. "And how did you obtain this document, Mr. Callahan?" Before I could respond, Martin intervened smoothly. "It was in plain view in the marital home, Your Honor, in a planner Mrs. Callahan keeps on her nightstand." Mr. Callahan observed it while collecting his personal belongings. The judge nodded, making a note before turning to Patricia Winters. "Ms. Winters, your response?" Patricia rose with the theatrical flair she was known for, her red suit demanding attention in the otherwise subdued courtroom. "Your Honor, while my client acknowledges the bank transfers were perhaps precipitous, they represented her good faith attempt to secure her rightful share of business assets prior to an anticipated amicable separation. The current injunction is not only unnecessary but actively harmful to ongoing business operations and my client's professional reputation." She argued that Elaine, as the creative force behind Callahan Designs, was being unfairly prevented from serving clients and advancing her career by restrictions that were punitive rather than protective in nature. "Mrs. Callahan has every right to pursue superior professional opportunities," Patricia continued. "The injunction Mr. Callahan obtained without her knowledge or ability to respond is transparently designed to damage her standing with clients and impede her transition to a position that better recognizes her exceptional talents." Throughout Patricia's presentation, I maintained a neutral expression despite the internal frustration her revisionist narrative provoked. Elaine was being positioned as the victim of my unreasonable restrictions rather than the architect of a failed financial ambush. When Patricia finished, Judge Harlow asked several pointed questions that suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by this characterization. "Ms. Winters, are you disputing that Mrs. Callahan attempted to transfer the business funds without Mr. Callahan's knowledge or consent?" "We characterize it differently, Your Honor. As an equal partner, Mrs. Callahan has equal claim to those assets." "Equal claim does not typically mean unilateral control, Counselor." Judge Harlow's tone was dry, particularly when partnership agreements specify dual authorization requirements. She turned her attention to Elaine directly. "Mrs. Callahan, were you planning to inform your business partner and husband about these transfers before executing them?" Elaine responded with practiced poise. "I intended to discuss the entire transition plan with Daniel once the preliminary arrangements were in place. I was seeking efficiency, not deception." "Efficiency," Judge Harlow repeated, her expression skeptical. "And the timeline Mr. Thompson presented, indicating you plan to transfer funds on May 20th and file divorce papers on June 1st. Does that reflect your intended approach to these discussions?" For the first time, Elaine appeared slightly flustered. "Personal notes taken during a brainstorming session shouldn't be given the weight of official documents, Your Honor. I was exploring options, not finalizing plans." Judge Harlow made another note before addressing both parties. "I've heard sufficient arguments regarding the financial aspects of this injunction. However, I remain concerned about the operational restrictions on Mrs. Callahan's ability to conduct legitimate business activities. Mr. Thompson, can you clarify exactly what access and capabilities your client has maintained for Mrs. Callahan?" Martin outlined the current arrangement. Elaine maintained access to all design files and client communications, but was prevented from unilaterally transferring funds, signing contracts, or making binding commitments on behalf of Callahan Designs without my countersignature. In essence, Your Honor, we've simply enforced the dual authorization requirements that already existed in their partnership agreement, but which Mrs. Callahan attempted to circumvent. Judge Harlow considered this information, then straightened her papers decisively. "I'm prepared to rule on this matter. The temporary injunction regarding financial assets will remain in place. Mrs. Callahan's attempted transfers demonstrate a clear risk to business continuity that justifies these protective measures." Elaine stiffened beside Patricia, who placed a warning hand on her arm. "However," the judge continued, "I'm modifying the operational restrictions. Mrs. Callahan must be permitted to fulfill her design responsibilities to current clients without unnecessary impediment. Both parties are ordered to maintain professional behavior and refrain from disparaging each other to clients, employees, or industry colleagues." She fixed both Elaine and me with a stern gaze. "This business represents your shared life's work, and provides employment for your staff. Don't destroy it in your haste to separate from each other." With that pointed admonishment, Judge Harlow set a date for a more comprehensive hearing and adjourned the court. As Elaine and Patricia gathered their materials, I caught my wife's eye across the courtroom. The cold fury in her expression confirmed what I already knew. This victory, while significant, was merely the opening salvo in what promised to be a protracted battle. But for now, the business assets remained protected, and Elaine's attempt to leave me with nothing had been thwarted by a vigilant banking algorithm and a judge who saw through her efficiency justification. It was enough for today. The weeks following the initial hearing established a tense new normal. Elaine and I continued working at Callahan Designs, maintaining a facade of professional courtesy that fooled no one, but prevented our personal conflict from completely disrupting business operations. Our employees walked on eggshells around us, while clients received reassurances from both sides that their projects remained on track despite the partnership restructuring. Martin and Patricia engaged in legal skirmishes that seemed designed primarily to test each other's resolve. Motions and counter-motions regarding financial disclosures, business valuation methodologies, and temporary support arrangements. Behind these procedural maneuvers loomed the larger questions that would eventually require resolution. How would Callahan Designs continue? If at all, how would our personal and professional assets be divided? And how had a partnership that once seemed unbreakable devolved into this battleground of competing interests? 3 weeks after the initial hearing, Lisa requested a private meeting in my office. As our senior project manager, she had been valiantly maintaining team cohesion despite the obvious tension between the company's founders. "Daniel, I need to share something uncomfortable," she began, closing the door behind her. Elaine has been having private conversations with several team members about joining her at Maxwell Design Group in Los Angeles. Though not entirely surprised, the confirmation still stung. Who has she approached? Megan and Jason from the design team, and she hinted to me that there would be a senior management position if I came along. Lisa's expression was troubled. "I'm telling you this because I think you should know, not because I'm considering her offer." I nodded, appreciating her loyalty while processing this new dimension of Elaine's exit strategy. "Thank you for the transparency, Lisa. I won't ask you to spy or report back on further conversations, but I do appreciate knowing where things stand. There's something else," Lisa continued hesitantly. "The Westbrook Hotel project. Elaine told them yesterday that she would continue as lead designer on their project through Maxwell if they preferred consistency through completion. She presented it as an option they might want to consider, given the uncertainty at Callahan Designs. This was a direct violation of Judge Harlow's order prohibiting client poaching during the dissolution process. Elaine was technically obeying the letter of the injunction by not transferring contracts, while violating its spirit by suggesting clients could follow her to her new position. "How do you know this?" "I was on the call as project manager." She didn't realize I was already connected when she had this conversation with Mr. Westbrook before the formal meeting started. Lisa looked uncomfortable but resolute. It didn't seem right, especially after Judge Harlow specifically addressed client relationships. "Thank you, Lisa. I'll discuss this with Martin." I paused, then added, "I want to be clear that I have no intention of closing Callahan Designs or letting any staff go as a result of this situation. If anything, we'll be looking to expand the design team to compensate for Elaine's departure." Lisa's relief was visible. "That's reassuring. Most of the team wants to stay, Daniel. They just need to know there's a future here." After she left, I called Martin to relay this new information. His response was measured but concerned. "It's a technical violation of the judge's order, but proving it would be challenging without putting Lisa in the difficult position of testifying against Elaine. Let me think about how to address this strategically." That evening, I received an unexpected call from Richard Westbrook himself, the developer behind our largest current project, and a client we had worked with on 3 previous hotel renovations. "Daniel, I'll be direct. Elaine suggested I might want to transfer our project to Maxwell Design when she moves to Los Angeles. Before making any decisions, I wanted to hear your perspective on the situation." The fact that Richard was calling me directly rather than simply accepting Elaine's proposal gave me hope. Over the years, I had built solid relationships with our clients that extended beyond Elaine's creative contributions. "I appreciate your call, Richard. The truth is, that Callahan Designs is not dissolving despite Elaine's decision to pursue a different opportunity. Your project team remains intact. Lisa as project manager, the same contractors we've already vetted, and the implementation schedule we've established. The only change would be bringing in James Chen as lead designer to work with the concepts Elaine has already developed. James Chen, from the Thompson Hotel renovation? His work was excellent. Yes, James has expressed interest in joining our team full-time. He and Elaine have similar aesthetic sensibilities but different strengths. He's particularly skilled at translating initial concepts into executable specifications, which could actually accelerate your timeline. Richard was quiet for a moment, considering. Daniel, Elaine is exceptionally talented, but our previous projects with Callahan have succeeded because of the systems and accountability you built around that talent. The Thompson renovation was the only project where we experienced no budget surprises or timeline extensions. His assessment echoed what Lisa had told me weeks earlier, that my contributions to the business went far beyond being just the numbers guy, as Elaine had dismissively characterized me. I'd like to keep our project with Callahan, Richard decided, with you and Lisa maintaining operational oversight and this James person handling design implementation. Would that work? Absolutely, I confirmed, feeling a surge of validation. I'll have Lisa update the project documents to reflect this adjustment. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, in the small apartment I'd rented after moving out of our home, and allowed myself a moment to absorb what had just happened. Westbrook was our largest client, representing nearly 30% of our current project portfolio. His decision to stay with Callahan rather than follow Elaine to Maxwell was not just a financial win, but a powerful affirmation that I wasn't, in fact, nothing without her. I texted Martin. Westbrook is staying with Callahan. Elaine's client poaching attempt backfired. His response came quickly. Excellent news. This strengthens our position considerably. Let's discuss next steps tomorrow. For the first time since discovering Elaine's attempted financial exodus, I felt something approaching optimism about the future. Not just surviving her betrayal, but potentially thriving despite it. The Westbrook decision proved to be a turning point in our professional standoff. When Richard personally informed Elaine of his choice to keep the project with Callahan Designs under my management, her carefully constructed narrative of being the indispensable creative force behind our success suffered its first significant crack. Within days, 2 other major clients had contacted me directly, expressing similar preferences for maintaining their relationship with Callahan rather than following Elaine to Maxwell. The pattern was consistent. They valued Elaine's design vision, but had greater confidence in the project management, financial transparency, and operational reliability I had established. These client decisions shifted the power dynamic noticeably. During our court-mandated mediation session the following week, Elaine's approach had subtly changed from dismissive confidence to grudging recognition that her exit strategy wasn't proceeding as planned. My client is prepared to discuss a more equitable division of business assets, Patricia Winters announced, her usual aggressive tone moderated slightly. However, we maintain that Mrs. Callahan's creative portfolio and client relationships represent significant contributions to the company's valuation. We've never disputed Elaine's creative contributions, Martin responded. What we've contested is the unilateral attempt to appropriate shared assets and clients without proper valuation or compensation. The mediator, a retired judge with extensive experience in business dissolutions, guided the discussion toward practical matters. How would Callahan Designs continue after Elaine's departure? What compensation would be appropriate for her ownership share? How would ongoing projects be managed during the transition? To my surprise, Elaine engaged with these questions more constructively than she had at any point since her attempted fund transfer. Perhaps the Westbrook decision had forced a reassessment of her leverage, or maybe the reality of untangling 15 years of intertwined personal and professional assets was finally sinking in. I could delay my start at Maxwell until the Sorensen and Brighton projects are completed, she offered, referring to 2 smaller but prestigious contracts that were particularly dependent on her design aesthetic. That would allow for proper client transitions and portfolio documentation for my replacement. The acknowledgement that she could be replaced, even with qualifications, represented a significant shift from her initial "you're nothing without me" position. As the mediation session progressed, we outlined a preliminary framework. Elaine would sell her ownership share of Callahan Designs based on an independent valuation, with payments structured over 3 years to maintain company cash flow. She would complete current design work while transitioning clients to James Chen, who had formally accepted our offer to join as design director. In exchange, she would be permitted to use project images in her portfolio with appropriate credits to Callahan Designs. None of these terms were finalized. The details would require extensive negotiation and formal agreement, but the tone had shifted from combative to cautiously collaborative. The business entity I had feared might be destroyed in our personal conflict now had a potential path forward. After the session, Martin and I debriefed at a nearby coffee shop. "This is substantial progress," he noted, stirring his espresso thoughtfully. "Patricia is usually much more aggressive at this stage. The client retention clearly impacted their strategy. It feels like a corner has been turned," I agreed. "But what about the personal side of the divorce? We haven't even begun to address the house, investments, or other assets." Martin nodded. "Those discussions typically become more reasonable once the business aspects are outlined. Without the leverage Elaine anticipated from client defections, she may be more inclined toward equitable distribution rather than a protracted court battle. I hope you're right." I sipped my coffee, considering the strange duality of my current situation. Professional affirmation alongside personal devastation. It's ironic. If Elaine hadn't attempted that account transfer, if the bank hadn't frozen her card, I might never have discovered her exit strategy until it was too late. I would have been blindsided completely. "Sometimes our adversary's overreach becomes our greatest advantage," Martin observed. "Elaine's attempt to leave you with nothing revealed her intentions, while you still had time to protect yourself." The wisdom of his observation stayed with me throughout the evening. As painful as Elaine's betrayal had been, the manner of its discovery had ultimately empowered rather than destroyed me. The frozen card that had triggered my panicked visit to Martin's office 3 weeks earlier had become, in retrospect, the salvation of both my personal financial security and the business I had helped build. That night, in my temporary apartment surrounded by boxes still unpacked, I found myself making notes about Callahan Design's future. Structural changes to accommodate Elaine's departure, potential expansion opportunities, marketing adjustments to emphasize our project management strengths alongside design excellence. For the first time since our separation, I was planning for tomorrow rather than just surviving today. A text from Lisa interrupted my planning. "Team dinner went well. Everyone seems relieved about the direction forward. James fits in perfectly. Thought you'd want to know." The simple message confirmed what I was beginning to truly believe. There was a viable future beyond Elaine's betrayal, one where I was demonstrably not nothing without her, but rather a capable leader with a clear vision and valued skills. I replied with genuine gratitude. "Thanks, Lisa. Couldn't navigate this without your support and the team's commitment. Better days ahead." And for the first time in weeks, that didn't feel like wishful thinking, but an achievable reality. 2 months after the bank's fraud alert had revealed Elaine's attempted financial exodus, I stood in our, now my, design studio, watching the installation of new signage. Chen and Callahan Design Partners replaced the familiar Callahan Designs logo that had identified our business for 12 years. The name change represented the most visible aspect of the company's transformation. After weeks of negotiation, Elaine and I had reached a settlement on the business dissolution. She would receive a structured buyout for her ownership share, while I would retain the company with James Chen joining as a partner and creative director. The arrangement allowed Elaine to move forward with her position at Maxwell while providing financial recognition of her contributions to building the firm. "Looks good," James commented, joining me by the window. At 42, he brought both established design credentials and fresh perspective to our restructured company. Bold, but still connected to the heritage. That was the goal, I agreed. Evolution rather than revolution. The personal side of the divorce had proven more complicated than the business dissolution. Elaine had initially insisted on keeping our home, despite my significantly greater contribution to the down payment and mortgage. After providing documentation of those contributions, We'd eventually agreed to sell the house and divide the proceeds proportionally, another compromise that fell short of her initial attempt to claim everything but represented a fair acknowledgement of our respective investments. As employees arrived for our Monday morning meeting, the first under the new company name, I observed their reactions to the signage. Most seemed positive, even energized by the tangible symbol of stability after months of uncertainty. Lisa caught my eye and gave an approving thumbs up as she entered the conference room. The meeting itself focused on practical matters, introducing James formally as partner and creative director, outlining workflow adjustments, and presenting the updated company portfolio that emphasized our integrated approach to design and project execution. Though Elaine's departure had necessitated these changes, her name was mentioned only briefly and respectfully, a conscious decision to acknowledge history without dwelling on the difficult circumstances of our separation. "Questions?" I asked after outlining the transition plan. Megan, one of the designers Elaine had initially approached about following her to Maxwell, raised her hand. "Will our project teams be restructured with James taking over design leadership?" "Some adjustments will be necessary," I acknowledged, "but we're aiming for continuity where possible. James and I will be meeting with each team individually this week to discuss specific projects." The remainder of the meeting proceeded with similar practical questions, employees less concerned with the personal drama that had precipitated these changes than with how those changes would affect their daily work and professional development. Their focus on moving forward rather than looking back reinforced my own determination to build something positive from the ruins of my marriage and original partnership. After the team dispersed to their respective workstations, Lisa lingered in the conference room. "That went well," she observed. "The name change makes it real. We're not just waiting for things to go back to normal, but creating a new normal." "Exactly," I agreed, though I'm still adjusting to it myself. "Have you heard from Elaine since the settlement was signed?" Lisa asked carefully. "Just through the attorneys. She's in Los Angeles now, setting up her new position." I kept my tone neutral, a skill I'd developed over months of maintaining professional composure despite personal turmoil. "The house closes next week, which will finalize most of our practical entanglements." Lisa nodded, understanding the layers beneath my straightforward response. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you've handled all of this with remarkable grace. Lesser people would have burned everything to the ground out of spite." Her observation gave me pause. The thought had certainly crossed my mind in those early days after discovering Elaine's betrayal. To fight fire with fire, to inflict the same kind of damage she had attempted to inflict on me. Martin had even outlined more aggressive legal strategies we could have pursued, potentially damaging Elaine's professional reputation and future prospects. Burning it all down would have hurt everyone. Our employees, our clients, ultimately myself, I replied after a moment. "Success is the better revenge, isn't it?" Lisa smiled. "Much better. And speaking of success, the Westbrook team sent over their approval of the revised fixtures package this morning, ahead of schedule and under budget." As Lisa departed to share the good news with the project team, I found myself reflecting on the strange path that had led to this moment. If someone had told me 3 months ago that Elaine would be gone, the company would be rebranded, and I would be navigating both personal and professional reinvention simultaneously, I would have been terrified. The prospect would have seemed overwhelming, possibly devastating. Yet here I stood, not just surviving, but beginning to thrive in this new reality. The frozen card that had initially seemed like a small temporary reprieve had actually been the pivot point for an entirely new chapter. One where I was proving definitively that I was not, in fact, nothing without Elaine, but rather someone capable of rebuilding, adapting, and moving forward with renewed purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Martin. "House closing documents ready for final review. Last major hurdle. Dinner to celebrate when it's done." I replied with genuine enthusiasm. "Absolutely. This milestone deserves proper acknowledgement. 3 months ago, I couldn't have imagined celebrating anything about my marriage's end. Now I recognized that what I was really celebrating wasn't the dissolution itself, but my own resilience in its aftermath. 1 year to the day after receiving the bank notification that had changed everything, I stood at the entrance of our newly expanded design studio, welcoming guests to the official launch party for Chen and Callahan Design Partners. The event marked both our company's successful transformation and the completion of the Westbrook Hotel renovation, our largest project and the one that had proven pivotal in establishing our post-Elaine credibility. The studio space, recently expanded into the adjacent unit, showcased the aesthetic that had become our new signature. James's innovative design vision harmonized with my emphasis on functional elegance and practical luxury. Digital displays highlighted completed projects while architectural models demonstrated current works in progress. Most importantly, the space hummed with the energy of our team, now expanded to 12 employees, including 3 designers who had joined us from competitors, attracted by our growing reputation for both creative excellence and operational integrity. "Quite a transformation," Richard Westbrook commented, accepting a glass of champagne from a circulating server. "Hard to believe it's been less than a year since that awkward conversation about whether I should follow Elaine to Maxwell." "A year of significant changes," I agreed. "Thank you again for your confidence during that uncertain time. Your decision made a real difference." Richard's expression turned reflective. "You know, I ran into Elaine at a design conference in San Diego last month. She seemed subdued. Not unhappy exactly, but perhaps not finding quite what she expected at Maxwell." This was the first indirect news I'd had of Elaine in months. After our divorce was finalized 6 months earlier, we had maintained strict professional separation, communicated only through attorneys when necessary, and carefully avoided industry events where we might both be present. "I hope she finds what she's looking for," I said, surprised to discover I genuinely meant it. The intense anger that had initially fueled my response to her betrayal had gradually been replaced by something more complex. Not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that her actions, however destructive they had been intended to be, had ultimately forced a positive evolution in my life and career. "Magnanimous of you," Richard observed with raised eyebrows. "Not sure I could be so charitable if someone had tried to empty my bank accounts and steal my clients." Before I could respond, Lisa appeared at my elbow. "Daniel, the Architectural Digest reporter is here for that interview. James is already in your office waiting." The feature in Architectural Digest represented another milestone: national recognition of our rebranded firm's innovative approach to hotel and commercial design. The interview had been scheduled months earlier, but fortuitously coincided with our launch party. As I excused myself from Richard to join the interview, Martin Thompson entered the studio, looking distinctly out of place among the design professionals in his conservative suit, but welcome nonetheless. Over the past year, he had transitioned from crisis legal counsel to trusted advisor, and eventually, friend. "I can only stay briefly," he apologized, accepting my handshake. "Court appearance in an hour, but I wanted to see the culmination of all our work in person." "I'm glad you're here," I said sincerely. "None of this would have been possible without your guidance that first day in your office." Martin glanced around the vibrant space, nodding appreciatively. "You've built something remarkable from what could have been catastrophic. Not every client manages that transition so successfully." "I had excellent counsel," I acknowledged, "and a frozen bank card that gave me the chance to act before it was too late." Martin smiled at the reference. "Sometimes fate offers small mercies. Speaking of which," he reached into his jacket pocket and extracted an envelope. "This arrived at my office yesterday. Given our history, I thought I should deliver it personally rather than trusting it to mail." I accepted the envelope with curiosity that turned to wariness when I recognized Elaine's handwriting on the front. From Elaine? What could she possibly want now? "I haven't opened it," Martin clarified. But given the timing, 1 year since everything began, it seemed potentially significant. Lisa appeared again apologetically. "Sorry to interrupt, but the reporter is waiting." "Go ahead," Martin encouraged. "The envelope will keep. This is your moment. Enjoy it." Slipping the unopened envelope into my jacket pocket, I joined James and the Architectural Digest reporter in my office, professionally compartmentalizing my curiosity about Elaine's unexpected communication. The interview focused on our firm's evolution, our design philosophy, and our growing portfolio of high-profile projects, a narrative of success that stood in stark contrast to the crisis that had precipitated our transformation. "One last question," the reporter said, consulting her notes. "Your firm underwent a significant restructuring last year when your original partner left. How did that challenge shape your current approach?" The question was delicate but not unexpected. Industry circles had inevitably buzzed with versions of our story, though the most dramatic details, the attempted account transfers, the emergency injunction, had remained largely private. Transitions create opportunities for reassessment and growth, I replied diplomatically. While the circumstances weren't what anyone would choose, they forced us to clarify our core values and strengths. Chen & Callahan is built on a foundation of creative excellence, balanced with operational integrity. Principles that have attracted both our current team and our client partnerships. James nodded in agreement. The restructuring allowed us to intentionally design our firm culture rather than simply inheriting it. That intentionality shows in both our internal processes and our client outcomes. The reporter seemed satisfied with our professional response, avoiding the personal aspects of the split that would have made for juicier copy but less dignified representation of our firm. After the interview concluded and James escorted the reporter back to the main event, I finally had a moment alone. The envelope in my pocket seemed to carry a peculiar weight, the past intruding on a present that had been carefully constructed without Elaine's presence or influence. With a deep breath, I opened it. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of Elaine's personal stationery, cream-colored with her initials embossed in silver at the top. Her distinctive handwriting flowed across the page in the same elegant script that had once signed anniversary cards and love notes throughout our marriage. Daniel, as you've likely noted, today marks 1 year since the bank notification that changed everything. I've started this letter a dozen times over the past month, struggling to find the right words, an ironic difficulty for someone who has always prided herself on clear expression. First, congratulations on your success with Chen & Callahan. Industry circles are taking notice of your work, particularly the Westbrook renovation. James was a strategic choice as creative partner. His aesthetic complements the operational framework you've always excelled at building. I'm writing not to reopen old wounds or seek reconciliation, but to acknowledge something I should have said months ago. I was wrong, not just in my actions, which were indefensible, but in my fundamental assessment of our partnership. When I told you that you were nothing without me, I believed it. I had constructed a narrative where my creative vision was the irreplaceable core of our success, with your contributions being secondary and replaceable. The past year has thoroughly disproven that arrogant assumption. The truth I failed to recognize during our years together is that sustainable success requires both vision and implementation, creativity and structure, inspiration and discipline. You provided the foundation that allowed my design work to flourish, creating systems that translated concepts into completed projects that satisfied clients and built our reputation. At Maxwell, I've encountered a different reality. Here, I am indeed just the designer, executing someone else's vision within systems I had no hand in building. The creative freedom I thought I wanted comes with limitations I never appreciated when working within the framework you created. I find myself oddly nostalgic for your spreadsheets, timeline projections, and insistence on thorough documentation. None of this justifies or excuses my betrayal. I made calculated decisions that would have devastated you professionally and personally if not for that frozen bank card. There is no adequate apology for such actions, so I won't attempt one. Some bridges cannot be rebuilt once burned. Instead, I'm writing to correct the record, at least between us. You were never nothing without me. If anything, the past year has proven the opposite, that you had the vision, resilience, and leadership to rebuild and improve what I attempted to dismantle. Your success is not in spite of my departure, but perhaps because of it. The challenges I created forced growth that might otherwise never have occurred. I don't expect forgiveness or response. Consider this letter simply an acknowledgement of truth from someone who once shared your life and who now observes your success from a distance with complicated but genuine respect. Elaine, I read the letter twice, emotions cycling through me like weather systems, anger, vindication, sadness, and finally, a strange sense of closure. The acknowledgement I had never expected to receive had arrived precisely 1 year after the crisis began, providing a symmetry that felt almost scripted in its perfection. The woman who had declared me nothing without her was now acknowledging the opposite from the diminished position she had created for herself. There was a certain poetic justice in the situation that no legal victory could have provided. A knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. James stood in the doorway, his expression questioning. "Everything okay? The partners from Benson Development are asking for you. They're interested in discussing the Atlanta project." I carefully refolded Elaine's letter and returned it to the envelope, then placed it in my desk drawer. The past, acknowledged and now properly filed away, would no longer dictate my present or future. "Everything is excellent," I replied with genuine conviction, rising to rejoin the celebration of what we had built from the ashes of what had been destroyed. "Let's go discuss Atlanta." As we walked through the studio, our expanded team engaged with clients, our portfolio prominently displayed, our future taking tangible shape around us, I felt the final weight of Elaine's betrayal lift from my shoulders. The frozen bank card that had once seemed like a small, temporary reprieve had actually been the catalyst for complete transformation, professional and personal. Elaine had been wrong about me being nothing without her. But perhaps, in a strange way, I had needed to lose everything to discover exactly what I was capable of building on my own terms. 5 years after the bank notification that had altered the trajectory of my life, I stood on the rooftop terrace of the newly completed Callahan Tower, a boutique hotel and residential building that represented Chen and Callahan's most ambitious project to date. The Chicago skyline spread before me, the evening light gilding glass and steel as the city transitioned from workday to nightlife. "Quite a view," James commented, joining me at the railing. "Worth all those permit battles and construction delays." "Absolutely," I agreed. In the 5 years since our partnership began, James had proven to be everything I could have hoped for in a creative counterpart. Innovative but practical, visionary but collaborative. Our professional relationship had none of the complex personal entanglements that had eventually undermined my partnership with Elaine, allowing for cleaner boundaries and more direct communication. The firm had grown steadily over those 5 years, expanding from our original 12 employees to a team of 37 spread across 3 offices. Our portfolio now included hotels, high-end residential developments, and select commercial properties, with a reputation for designs that balanced aesthetic innovation with functional excellence and financial discipline. "The investors seem impressed," James noted, gesturing toward the crowd mingling behind us. Financial backers, industry partners, and clients gathered for the building's private preview before its official opening the following week. They should be. We delivered on budget and only 3 weeks behind schedule, practically a miracle in this industry. Lisa approached, now our chief operations officer after proving herself indispensable during the company's transformation. "Daniel, the Architectural Digest photographer wants some shots of you by the south-facing windows before we lose the golden hour light." As I followed her inside, I caught a glimpse of an elegantly dressed woman across the rooftop. Blonde hair swept into a sophisticated updo, black cocktail dress contrasting with the warmer tones most guests had chosen. For a disorienting moment, I thought it was Elaine, but as the woman turned, I saw it was merely someone with a similar build and coloring. The momentary mistaken identity triggered a reflection on how rarely I thought about my ex-wife these days. After her letter on the 1-year anniversary of the frozen bank card, we had had no direct communication. I had neither responded to her acknowledgement nor sought any further interaction. Occasional industry gossip brought news. She had left Maxwell Design Group after 2 years, started her own smaller practice in Los Angeles, then relocated to New York for a position with a prestigious firm there. None of these developments affected me emotionally anymore. The anger had faded years ago, replaced first by indifference, and eventually by a detached appreciation for the growth her betrayal had inadvertently catalyzed. After completing the photo session, I rejoined the celebration, engaging with investors and clients with the easy confidence that had become my professional signature. The shy numbers guy, who had once deferred to Elaine in social settings, had evolved into a respected industry figure in my own right. Quoted in design publications, invited to speak at conferences, sought after for the unique combination of creative partnership and operational excellence our firm represented. As the evening wound down, Martin Thompson made a rare appearance, now semi-retired, but still serving as my personal attorney and occasional advisor to the firm. "Impressive achievement," he said, surveying the space with appreciation. "From emergency injunction to landmark building in 5 years. Not many crisis clients manage that trajectory." "I had excellent legal counsel," I reminded him with a smile. and a frozen bank card that created the opportunity. The reference had become something of a private shorthand between us over the years. Acknowledgement of how a banking algorithm's suspicious activity alert had transformed potential disaster into unexpected opportunity. "Have you heard the latest about Elaine?" Martin asked, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. "Nothing recent," I replied truthfully. "Last I heard she was in New York. Paris now, apparently. Leading the design team for some luxury hotel group's European expansion." Martin studied my reaction carefully. "Does that news affect you at all these days?" I considered the question honestly, only as a data point about a former colleague. "The personal connection dissolved years ago." Martin nodded, satisfied with my response. "Some clients never fully disconnect from the emotional impact of betrayal. It becomes a defining narrative they can't escape. You've managed the healthier path." I had no choice, I reflected. Remaining defined by what Elaine did would have meant she was right, that I was nothing without her. Proving her wrong required moving forward rather than looking back. As the gathering concluded and guests departed, I found myself alone on the rooftop terrace again. Chicago now transformed into a glittering nightscape below. The building beneath my feet, Callahan Tower, named with quiet vindication, stood as physical proof of what had been built from the ruins of betrayal. Elaine's final assessment had been correct in one respect. The challenges she created had indeed forced growth that might otherwise never have occurred. The frozen card that had initially seemed a small reprieve, a temporary protection against financial devastation, had actually been the first domino in a sequence that led to greater success than our original partnership might ever have achieved. "You're nothing without me," she had declared with absolute confidence 5 years earlier, never imagining that her attempt to prove that statement would instead prove precisely the opposite. That when stripped of everything, I would discover resources, resilience, and capabilities that exceeded even my own expectations. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from James. "Wall Street Journal wants to feature the tower in their design section next month. I told them you'd call tomorrow to discuss." I smiled, typing a quick affirmative response before taking one last look at the city spread before me. From emergency legal maneuvers to industry recognition, from betrayal to rebuilding, from a frozen bank card to a landmark tower bearing my name, the journey had been neither linear nor easy, but it had led to a destination far better than the one I had originally envisioned. Not despite Elaine's attempt to leave me with nothing, but because of it. What a powerful journey we've witnessed today. Daniel's story reminds us that sometimes our greatest challenges can become unexpected catalysts for growth and transformation. Have you ever experienced a moment when something that initially seemed devastating actually created an opportunity for positive change in your life? Or perhaps you've had to rebuild after betrayal or loss? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more explorations of resilience, reinvention, and human relationships. Each week, we share stories that remind us of our capacity to overcome obstacles and create meaningful new beginnings. Next week, we'll be exploring another emotional journey about finding strength after loss that I believe will touch your heart just as deeply. Don't forget to like this video and hit that notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Your engagement helps our community grow and allows us to continue bringing these meaningful narratives to life. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, sometimes the things meant to break us become the foundation for something even stronger than what we had before. Until next time.